Hey everyone, welcome to the latest video from Painters Motivating Painters Reviews. If you're new to the channel, we're a YouTube or a Facebook group of people who are interested in miniature painting and helping each other out to progress through painting and give each other tips and tricks and things like that. And every month, people are welcome to submit one of their finished works to an event on the page, and then we look through them and we try to give people advice on how they could take their painting up the next step. So if that's something that would interest you, we're always welcome to new entries and new submissions. So we're going to get straight into it. The first submission for October is this classic dragon by JP Fritz, something. It's very nice. It's very it is one of the classic all metal, I think, dragons. I like the way you've got this you went for the hard way of doing it, which is where it's all black essentially. A lot of the time you see black dragons done with like an underbelly that's a different color, or like their wing membranes are a different color, just because painting something in all black can be a bit dull because it's not a very interesting color. I think the red in the eye helps to kind of draw attention there. It's very sinister looking. I do think a lot of the time though, it does the reason people add color to their black dragons is because it looks a bit better with color in it. And you could do that either like that by having an area of it that is like cream or bone colored or whatever, or you can use, they call it chromatic black, where you just use like really dark blue or green or purple or whatever. And that gives a bit of variation. So you could have like the wings are an extremely dark purple that basically looks as black, and then the other parts of it could be green or red or whatever. Um, and then other tips I was thinking of were, I think the horns or the tusks or whatever coming out of the mouth. I like the way you've got like kind of like tartar or whatever at the base of them. But I think a lot of them is pure white. So I think you could kind of like run some stripes up it or have them go to black at the end, just to make it a bit less uniform looking. And the base is cool. I like the fact that it's like this barren kind of swamp, but you could probably like dot some foliage around in there, have like a pool of like goo or whatever, to make that kind of swamp feel a bit more real. Like I get that he's probably meant to be, it's like all burned down or whatever, but it's just a bit flat looking and it's very dark colored. So the dragon kind of doesn't stand out from the base like the way it could if it had some foliage or whatnot on it. But thanks for submitting. I'll pass you over to Jim.
Yeah, much on the same lines. I mean, if you want a fully black dragon, then by damn it, have a fully black dragon. It's not an issue at all. But yeah, as Matt said, to paint black, for it to sell black, only 50% of it has to actually be black. The rest of it can be chromatically going lighter. So play with that next time. This is a really tricky model to do it on because there's so many small tiny facets, and I can see you've gone in and highlighted everything individually, which must have taken a long time, so kudos to you for that. But yeah, then as Matt said, you can glaze colors in just to change the hue slightly, but it will still read as black because 50% of that surface is flat black. So yeah, that was good advice. Yeah, I think the tusks are a bit too bright as well, so just knock that back to a bone or an ivory would also help. Or as Matt said, put like a transition on it. That's cool. And then, yeah, I also agree with the base. It does need a little bit of something else going on. I mean, if this is set in on like a wargaming board and everything is very sort of just brown and not very detailed, then kind of fair enough. But I think even just like a very light dry brush just to pick out some of the texture would really help. But yeah, otherwise, cool looking model. And thanks for submitting, JP. Okay, moving on to a squiggly dude from Eddie. Took a while to get this down, so I really love albino is like a quite a difficult thing to do, and I think you've nailed the colours on this. To be honest, you've got a good run of colours. It's got like a kind of sickly, just barely like green or teal tinge to it, which I think really helps give it that sort of albino feel. I did think with the skin though, it looks a little bit too textured for me. I think just smoothing this down a bit and let it settle down and come together a lot better. You could also push like the volumetrics a bit, like underneath here would be a bit more shaded. In these crevices, sort of creases, just be like a bit darker from what it is. You've only probably really got like 3 values of tonal variety here. So just push it. I'd push it down one, so make your shadows darker, and push the highlights up one as well. So you're kind of running 4-3-2 in terms of like the gamut of color you're using. One being the brightest, five being the darkest. This is on the skin, by the way. If you look at the teeth, it's much better. You've got like a much better contrast with the teeth, and I love how you've roughly textured those as well. That's great. Metals I thought were a triumph. This like burnished, corroded steel that you've got going on here is really good. I like the weapon as well. If you can spin around to that, like how the cutting edge is still really sharp, but then on the top edge it's like corroding stuff. So you've done really well there. Like there's these blue areas on it that didn't look like they've had the same amount of love. I get that it's kind of like in a shaded area, but it's just really flat and compared to the rest of it. So I don't really know what's going on here. Like this leg under this arm, but specifically the handle of the weapon as well. It just looks like completely blocked out. So if there's anything you can do there to add some more detail, that would be really handy. A wicked little touch on his face as well, with like half albino, half orc or goblin rather. That was really cool. So nice work there. Did I have anything else? Oh, the blue on the base is a little bit loud, I thought. Have I zoomed in a bit here? Hang on. Okay. Yes, the blue is a little bit too loud. For me, that's a lot of very saturated blue, and it's unbalancing the whole thing. So a bit of a tricky one, like because it's done, but maybe like for next time you've either got to include some of the blue up on him or knock this back so it's not quite so saturated and striking, because this is all like quite pastel. And it's not as saturated as down here, so straight away the eyes just yanked. You got you got your reds down here, which draws attention. Bright yellow, only instance of yellow on the whole thing, and the blue is such a big, bright, bold area as well. It's just your eyes are just going down straight away, which I think is unfair because the model deserves more focus, more attention than that. But on the whole, yeah, it's a really cool looking scheme, and I think you've done some really nice textures on it. So nice, Eddie. Thank you very much. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, it's a great looking take on this figure. I think Jim said most of what I was thinking. Just on the base, like it is very bright, and funnily, like if he was under strong light, because the base is such a bright blue, you get blue light bouncing off it, and because the squig is so pale, it would end up like glowing blue underneath, which is an option you could do, but it's what would probably happen in real life, especially for pale skin. Like you see sometimes people have like a bright blue t-shirt on, they get like blue glow on their like underneath their chin and stuff. So that'd be a way to get blue onto the figure. But mostly, like I think the blue bases for goblins is kind of popular, but one of the reasons is because often the main colors people use on goblins are very warm. They're like reds and yellows and oranges, is like the accent color for like night goblins. And like a squig is classically red, so that would like draw loads of attention with a big squig. But just because you've done him in albino, it means that the blue has more color saturation to it. Um, so yeah, it's a little bit eye catching. You could probably like just put a bunch of dark washes onto it if you wanted. If it's part of your army, like I mean, whatever, that's your army base, it's fine. Or you could do also, and what we like to see a lot of the time is having like a ring around it where like you could have a brighter blue in the middle and then it's darker around the outside. And the last thing I was going to say was, yeah, the actual front view on the beast is just like super great. I really love those magenta glowing eyes. I love the like kind of texture you can kind of see on the tongue. This guy always reminds me of those big demons from Doom, and he's like super threatening looking, and it's
Keiko
a really
demon,
great,
yeah.
yeah, interesting take on the figure. And I think, yeah, it's hard to pull off albino. You did a great job, man. I think you should be really happy with it. It's a novel take on the figure, and it's really well done. So thanks again for submitting, and good luck in all your future projects. Back. All right. Cool. Facebook. Why do you never work correctly? Okay, next up we've got a ogre from Blood Bowl, I think, submitted by Vinny Garcia. So yeah, it's a nice scheme. The blue and yellow, obviously great contrast. I think that, and the skin also is really strong in terms of like, I love the way he has like those ready elbows and upper end of the face. He's got a very ruddy complexion. I think that's like probably the standout. part of the figure for me is the skin. It's like really nice, and that's good because he's such a like skin heavy guy. Um, there is kind of a very obvious seam line on one of his legs, like where you assemble the model and the two legs aren't like there's a gap between them. And as well on the shoulder, one of the shoulders, you got like a mold line right on the back of his arm. So you should scrape those off when you're assembling it and then fill in the gap with some kind of putty like green stuff or millet or whatever. You can also do it like sometimes you don't notice until you start painting. And people think it's real fiddly and difficult, but actually, like if you just scrape off that bit, the model could be finished, and then you just repaint, retouch up that bit in like 5 minutes. For gaps like that one on his leg, it's a bit more tricky because usually the putty has its own color. But like again, it's just a small area, you just blend it back in, and you don't need to worry about priming or anything. People get real finicky about that. Like, oh no, that bit won't be primed, but it's irrelevant. Yeah, to be honest with you. Then other stuff, yeah, I think the numbering looks great. The way you have that like centered, probably a decal or something, looks great in the middle of his back. And like I said, I think the skin, like the way you've got like his knee and everything, looks really good. And he looks like an American football player. Yeah, that's it. Jim, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think you've done a pretty decent job on it. Definitely great advice from Matt about filling the gaps. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily need repriming. Such a tiny amount. I mean, priming's very, very important, obviously, with metal or like pewter figs, but like with plastics and resins, they're a lot better at taking it. As long as you sort of varnish it in, I'd gloss varnish it first and then matte varnish it, obviously, just to protect it that little bit more. But you shouldn't have too much issue with paint sticking to, neat gap fill or whatever that is. Liquid green stuff would be a great thing to use here. It does shrink a bit when you put it in the gaps. You have to put it on a few times. But yeah, once it's on, it would look much better. For the skin, I agree with Matt mostly. I just think it's a bit scratchy and a bit sketchy on the face value. So just smoothing that out to the same level that you have on like the rest of his body would be nice. Gentle with your washes as well. I know it's Blood Bowl and it's probably tabletop and it's probably fine, but just watch out for pooling, like what's happened on these straps on his ankle. And look in these recesses, it's just pulled a little bit too much, so watch out for that. But you got pretty decent level of contrast across the whole thing. You could push the volumes of the skin a bit, brighter on the top and darker underneath. Just push it a bit, but again for tabletop, that's kind of picky. Then just a little bit more like separation. I'm not sure if this was finished when this picture was taken, but like cleanliness and separation on this like front buckler shield is not really there. But I don't think he's fully finished because his foot's not painted there either. So let's have a look at oh yeah, here we go. Looking at the wrong pictures. So this is the one I was meaning. Like there's still a little bit of like cleanliness and separation issues on the shield. You've done a much better job on like the strap and like the buckles and stuff that are across his chest. So can be done. Let's see if he smoothed out his head. No. See what I mean? It's really sketchy and really scratchy like the head. But these like the arms and the chest and the belly and stuff are much smoother. So just few glazes will fix that up lovely. There you go, Vinny. Hope that helps. Okay, moving on to Stephen with this monstrosity. Well done for finishing it. I know how it feels to have a whip going on for months. So yeah, nice one. He's very pleased with the wings. Not sure about the armor color. Initially thinking more of a bone color, but over time turned greener. This is the armor. Do you think it contrasts well with the deep purple though? As always, going for good separation. All your comments welcomed. Okay, cool. So with the armor, I quite like the armor. It kind of looks nurgly, and it should, I think. So I think you've got a great separation as well going on across the arm. There's lots of little bits going on. Good work on the bones as well, sticking out. So that's cool. There's something a little bit off with like the focus of the model because the armor is obviously the brightest. So having like the purple wings or purpley blue, but like as they get towards the middle, it's sort of going a bit more purpley. I think that the like cowl and like the headdress, as it were, is a bit too dark, and it's making the focus peel away, and like because the armor is sort of spread out around him, like there's nowhere really for the eye to resolve, if you know what I mean. So I think you could push the values on this cowl and make it a lot brighter. That would really help. Sorry, let me get my notes up. So yeah, you need to create this like brightness around him. I mean, you know, ideally the focus be on the face, but when you get a cowled figure that's, you know, hooded, and he's deliberately hooded because he's menacing and evil, um, you've got to work with the cowl. You've got to work with what's there. Also, these spikes that are sticking out are just flat black, so there's a good opportunity there for some like more of this gold trim. Let's just check I'm not looking at a whip and you didn't sort that out later. I'm very guilty at doing that. Sorry. No, it doesn't look like it. So yeah, there's an opportunity there to brighten those up, but I just think the general value of it would be appreciated a lot more if it was higher on this cowl. But yeah, you've separated it really nicely. I like what you've done with the wings. That looks stunning. Look at that. Really cool. Like punchy colors. I like how you've gone for like nebula type effect to it, but then included like the pustules as well. That's a very cool contrast between like the blues and the oranges. Perfect color combination. Very nice. What else did I have? So down on the base, the rock looks super dark. It looks like there's good tones in there. See if I can get one at the front. That one helps a bit. So it looks like there's good tones on there. It's just quite dark. So even if you could like stipple or mottle some like brighter tones on it, or dry brush even, that would be cool, because you can see like red, brown, green, blue in there, but it's all just very dark. So I thought it'd be nice if you could just brighten that up a bit, because like the green sludge is really dark as well, and it's only like 2 colors. So just pushing some more tones around there would be cool. Great little details on the little nurglings as well. That looks really nice. And I think the only other thing I thought was that the weapon looked a little bit not flat, but it's crying out for something more. Whether it be like a muzzle burn effect on it, or you can get 3D printed. You could probably just buy them, if not get a mate to print them, like a little muzzle flash or something that you could paint to make it look like it's actually being fired, or like a glow effect or something. It's just like some of it's like brass, some of it's silver. It's washed, but that's it. But like on the other metals, you've got like these really cool. It looks like secondary reflections and stuff painted in, and like on the weapon, there's a lot more sort of, you know, volume and texture to it. But the gun just didn't look like you went. It looked like you didn't go as far with it. So yeah, a little bit more love on the weapon. I think that would be cool. But yeah, overall, really nicely solid piece. Compositionally, I think it's quite strong. So yeah, a lot to be happy with here, Stephen. Over to you, Matt.
Yep, great work. It's a super intimidating model because there's so much going on, and every bit is so detailed. And like, obviously, he's like the Primarch, so there's like pressures on to make him look really good. But I think like, yeah, the wings look amazing. They're really nice, especially in the rear view where you've got that Starfield kind of look, and it still has the tattered butterfly look to it. And then I think the armor looks really good, to be honest with you. Like, whether it's meant to be like white that's stained, or whether it's meant to be like a real pale green, I think it doesn't matter really. I think like that's kind of synonymous with the Death Guard anyway. And I really like the way you've highlighted it, like with the really strong kind of like NMM style highlights that show it's like a metallic surface, and it looks really good. The way the darker areas are more green-ish, and the other areas are more bone. I think it's really good. So, and I like the brass weaponry and stuff like that as well. But yeah, totally agree with Jim. I think the whole cowl could be lighter. Like, so the highlight, the color you use for your highlight, which is kind of a warm purple, which is kind of interesting that you use a warm purple for his cloth with his face, but it's very cold on the wings. So I don't know if that's intentional, or if like it's just like the ratios of the lightness kind of did that. But in any case, I think the color that you used for the highlights of that is like, that could be the main color of it, and then you could have the edges could be real worn, and you can have like little white, like, or like white-ish mix of bone color into that purple around his face to kind of frame it. I think it looks much better in the side view where you can see his eyes like kind of glowing in there. But like that, because his armor is such a bright color, it makes his face look like a hole kind of in the middle. Um, and then your eye gets drawn out towards all the peripheral stuff like the wings and the kind of droopy bits then that he's actually floating up on top of. But yeah, because it is tricky again, as he said, as Jim said, with when you have a figure with with a cowl that hides their face, but you kind of need to make it so that the cowl has high contrast, like has high brightness around it, so that their face looks like it's in shadow to show that they have kind of their face in shadow. If that makes sense. If the cowl's too dark, the whole area just looks like it's kind of empty. But yeah, super great model. You should be really happy with it, and good luck in the future. Hopefully, you can crank out more of your or leave stuff on the whip shelf for less time. Or sure, sometimes it's fine to put stuff on your shelf and then just leave it there forever, or come back to it in a year or whenever. Things don't always have to be finished, and then even when something is finished, it's only ever finished to a given level. So you could just say all painting is whips, and just don't submit stuff to the channel that's like all primer. Okay, next up we've got Jake Goshi, with another Demon Primarch dude. This one's Angron, and asking about differentiating the hot and cold red. Yeah, it's really cool. And what do you think about the weathery blood effects? Yeah. So first of all, what do I have minutes? Yeah, I think that the way you have like I really love the hot red like on the axe and the way it's like fading out down there. And it is great that you have two different kinds of red because obviously he's like all red. So having that kind of darker, more visceral look for like the wings and the skin and stuff, and the brighter one for the armor is a good shape, especially because he's got that bright gold trim. Um, yeah. I think that it does have a similar-ish problem that we see with this figure a lot, which is his face is very hidden. Again, like the way the figure is hunched over makes it really hard to pick out where the face actually is. So I think you could have gone for a brighter red in the highlights around the face, even though I know you're saying you're using the dark red for his skin, but like mix in like a light flesh tone into it or something just to give him highlights to add definition. Because I think the definition on the crown of cables he has is actually really nice, where you've got that like dark recess and then it's like that. But then again, his face is kind of too dark in the middle and we kind of miss where it is. Especially because on this particular figure, it's not where you'd think the face would be. He's in a kind of weird pose. So you need to bring that out, I think, a little bit more. Um and yeah, I think the blood effects look like really good. They're not like super overpowering, like because they kind of like fit in with him being so red as well. It's like the Deadpool thing. If you wear red, like you can't see the blood. I think it looks really good on his sword, and it's helping to tie the sword in for it being like partially red. And then on the axe, like the way it is kind of like I don't know if it's actually meant to be red and then the gore like is blackened out in it, but I think it looks really good. So I'd be very happy with those blood effects, and as well like painting a figure that is largely like monochromatic. Like I think he'd like turned out really well for it. So yeah, um, yeah, and I loved it. Like when I looked at his shoulder initially, I was like, why is it so blue? Because I felt that I was a very like singular, like there's more focus on his shoulder because it's like that blue and green, and then his face is like in shadow behind it. Then I looked closer and I was like, oh, it's the world, and it's got teeth around it because he's like the world eaters. And I was like, okay, cool. Like we'll allow it. It's a nice feature, but it's very bright. So just think about that sort of composition. Like you want to balance out like your free hands with other stuff that's in the figure. Jim?
Yeah, that was going to be my first point, was that from that viewing angle, the eye is drawn to the shoulder pad, not the face. So yeah, I'd not. This kind of looks a bit glossy, and it's like reflecting some of your light from the picture. So yeah, maybe just dial this back a little bit in terms of brightness and matte it down, and that'll help. But yeah, definitely punch the brightness up in the face. You've done a great job with like the brightness and the saturation and the warmth of the armor. Definitely, I think his face, or even some sections like the T section of the face down the middle and then across like the eyes and the cheekbones, could be as bright, if not brighter than that. That would really help. First go at blood effects. Smashed it, mate. Like it's so easy just to get blood for the blood god or blood effects just out of the pot and just go goop, done. Thank you very much. But it looks to me like you've done the correct thing, which is to add black into it. it's wet, and just sort of stipple it round. It gives you that really like thick, this is life blood. It's very fresh. He's literally just cleaved somebody in half, and you've got that deep like organ based blood, not the like very bright, very like fleshy blood that's, you know, just like in your skin and in your tissues. This is like blood from organs. He's seriously disemboweled somebody with this thing. So yeah, wonderful work on that richness in the blood. That's really, really cool. I thought maybe the horns might be a bit too bright, so just knock them back to more sort of like a more bony colour, for want of a better terminology, or put more striations in it to bring a bit more sort of like depth towards the base of the horns. Like it's there, but I'd take it a little bit further. Not that many to do, is there really? So that was the thing, and then I thought, oh sorry, lost my place. The base rim, Matt's gonna laugh, but like I'm not sure, I wasn't sure whether that was supposed to be like dried blood around there, or whether it's like you've got a special base and it's very shiny and it's just like what's going on with it. But I think it needs tidying up a little bit and probably just blacking out, to be honest. Just nice flat black, matte it down, varnished, boom, done. That would look much, much better. It's not quite, I mean, I say it with any base that's not black rimmed. If it's not black, then it's not right. But it's just my personal opinion. So there's
Send it back.
You what?
If it's not black, send it back.
It's not black, send it back. Once you go black, you never go back. But yeah, very nice work on the base, like with the skulls, the spears, the Blood Angel. I was going to say Blood Raven, but I think it's a Blood Angel helmet. Very cool. Yeah, but like separation, attention to detail, like the metals look really good. Great work with the spatter, like where you've put it, and it's like in varying degrees of severity, like getting less severe as you get further away from the weapons. Really, really good attention to detail. Like even like putting it on the end where it's just like smashed somebody with like the butt end of the sword, the pommel, I think that's called, isn't it? So yeah, really, really good. And he's even like got it up on his feet and stuff, like he's traipsing through this gore. Like brilliant use of the FX. So yeah, nice one, Jake. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Moving up to Lee with this, I think it's like 75mm like anime type figure. She looks really cool. What can I do better for photos? Who?
I think it's from Kingdom Death. I think they're actually fairly small. They're like 35 or 40mm.
Oh, are they? Oh,
that's
fair play.
Yeah, I'm just yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, better photos. So focus, I think, is your main issue. So your camera's too close. Get further away. I'm presuming you're doing this off a phone because these look like very, very common problems and issues that you get when taking pictures with phones. So step number 1 sounds completely ridiculously simple. Clean the lens. People don't realize how filthy the lens on your camera is, man. Sleeve, clean it. You'll be amazed at the difference that can make, honestly, straight out of the gate. So that's number 1. Secondly, super stable. So you want it like resting on something, or get a tripod if you can. Quite far away, so the whole thing is perfectly in focus. Take your lighting doesn't look too bad. I'd get like a flat background for it if you can. So rather than here, this white, you get like a sheet and it's fixed at the top and then it's fixed 90 degrees underneath as well, and you get this like arc. So it's all just like one sheet of fabric or paper or whatever, but without this 2-3 very different materials that you've got going on here. And then once you set your lighting and stuff, snap the picture, and then afterwards you go in and you crop the picture to make the picture smaller, rather than trying to zoom in and make it big on your screen when you're taking the picture, if that makes sense. So make sure it's all in focus, the lighting's right, take the picture, then afterwards make the picture smaller, so crop all the edges out, and that will buff and that'll bring it right up, like all in focus, and it'll be much nicer. So hopefully that helps. There are loads of YouTube videos on this, so go check those out. How to take pictures of your miniatures with your phone. Like Squidmar's got pictures, Vince has got pictures, videos on how to do this. I think Cujo as well. So like loads of the top painters do videos on it. So check it out. As for the model herself, I think she looks quite good, quite smooth, quite well separated. The NMM gold, I'd say you'd need to push the shadow values. It's gone quite bright, but I think you need to take the shadows a bit deeper and also broaden like the area of the highlights. It's not quite reading as metal just yet, but it's well on the way. So smoothness, more brightness, and deeper shadows, but like smaller values than the highlights because she's in a very well lit scenario. The whole thing looks like it's just lacking like shadow value. So you're in like the 3s and 4s of like your color gamut. Again, 1 being the brightest, 5 being the darkest. So you could just push shadows where they would fall like volumetrically, like underneath here. It's a bit blurry, so we can't just get one on the face. So just like around the eyes, like more on the cheeks, more underneath sort of the chin, and indeed under here, under her chest where it goes down there. So just pushing the shadows more would be really helpful. And like the hair looks quite desaturated. So again, just pushing the saturation level, the highlights as well a bit brighter would really help on there. But like overall, she's looking pretty good. Just the shadows and the saturation really. I really like what you did with the base as well. This watery effect that you're going on has been pulled off really nicely. So good stuff there. Thank you very much, Lee. Matt.
Yep, really nice mini. As Jim said, there's like a million YouTube videos on how to take photos with your phone. Literally every YouTube miniature content person is like, "What's an easy video to do? How to take photos with your phone." My favorite one is JH Miniatures because it's like really straightforward. I think Jim has also pretty much covered everything you need to hear. But one thing that I find is if you're having trouble with cast shadows, if you put your lights facing the mini, you want to have diffuse lights and have them like pointed at the mini because so you don't get stuff like where her hair is casting an actual shadow over her eyes there. All the shadows then will be the ones that you painted in. Because any shadows get like forced behind them. You can't see it. Yeah, it's an. Oh, and also you might want to check out Surastro has videos on painting Kingdom Death minis, and they're like amazing. I just think everyone should see that. But yeah, and when if you're painting for photos, it's worth noting as well that certain things like your eye on a camera work differently. So certain things look better in photos, and certain things look worse. So it's worthwhile to like take photos as you're going and then review the photos. So stuff like photos pick up really clearly like any little mistakes that you made because you're like zoomed in so close, and little bits of like balls of paint and things. You'll see them in the photos and you can go and take them off. But then it can be more forgiving for stuff like NMM and OSL because there's no like frame of reference. So your eye kind of goes, oh yeah, if you it is this big. So yeah, that's just something that's worth trying out. If you want your figure to look good in pictures, you should take pictures of it as you go. But I think she looks really good. Anyway, like I really like the soft colors that you used. I think it's like interesting, and like the base looks great, and she's got this kind of like nice kind of atmosphere to the whole thing as well. So thanks for submitting, and good luck in the future. We're going to move up to this tank by Harry Algren, that man who likes fencing with rapier and dagger. So I got some finishing photographs on time. Forgot the turret hatch. Oh well, we'll just say maybe they forgot to paint it at the manufactory or whatever it comes from. Trying to get more realism without being where to go to get a more realistic vibe. Okay, well, so there's tons of stuff on painting tanks realistically if you look at like historical painting, but then it tends to be a bit different to the style used in like Warhammer style painting or fantasy or science fiction or whatever. They tend to be more focused on like realistic colors, like giving stuff very flat coats and doing loads and loads of weathering and things like that. But you can totally check out that. It's very eye opening, like the amount of detail. There's like, is it white shift or clay painted? Just look up paint historical tank painting, and there'll be all sorts of stuff to do with like people getting into the nitty gritty of like what the treads should look like in your tank. I think this is quite nice in terms of the wear and the weathering. I really like the way you've got that cream color, and then it's like chipped off, and it looks like it's kind of rusted then underneath. Um, and as well, like one of the things is that how realistic do you want it to be? Because in real life, you don't paint a tank white with blue stripes on it. Like that's a bad idea. You paint it like whatever color the surroundings are, and you paint it all the same color, and then because you don't want to cover it in like camo netting or whatever. And you don't have insignias and stuff like this on it, or possibly headlights. But yeah, so you were going for like imaginative realism, I suppose, and I think it looks really good in that regard. Like the weathering is kind of where I expect it to be. I like the way there's dust kicked up. I think I like the fact that your red dust is like almost part of your color scheme. It's like red, white, blue. But there's way too much dust on the treads for how much is on the rest of the model. Because basically, it looks like it's going through like this Martian desert, and also like that's not a realistic color of red. It's like that looks like red oxide pigment. Like Mars, for example, has a lot of rust in the soil, but it's not the only thing there, so it's just a reddish brown. Whereas this looks like literally red pigment out of a container, which you could go for, but it's quite overpowering. And if it's literally rolling through this dust, it's going to kick it up everywhere. Like the whole thing will end up being painted red, and actually then the treads will end up with like less red on them because they're wearing off the dust against the ground as they go around. So I would go back and like sponge off a bunch of the red that's on the tracks, and then move more of it up. And it looks like you've kind of got like a mud splatter thing where it's like all around the area, around the treads, but it looks much more like a dusty kind of thing. So I'd imagine it like puffing up and then settling like you have it on the front. I think black's really good. I think like the way it is on the actual just like front in between the treads should be kind of like how it is everywhere, and then tone it down a little bit on the treads, unless you want to have it like literally be everywhere. Um, yeah, that's my advice. I think it looks really good, by the way. It's just a really nice looking tank. I love the freehands you've done on it, and the decals and all the wear and that kind of thing. I think it's a good, and also the panel modulation on the blue, I think looks really good. So overall, great piece. Jim, over to you.
Yeah, I love it. Great scheme. Love the use of like just the pop color, the blue modulation on the blue. Awesome. Like the soft subtleness of the use of the pigments. There's a lot of it at the front, but my main issue with the weathering, because I'd give you like 9 out of 10 for weathering, maybe even a 9.3. But on the back, there's nowhere near enough. Nowhere near enough on the back. Moving the tank, obviously moving forward, this would be flying up like crazy. All of this would be weathered. All of this would be like with the dust pigment. There's a little bit at the back, but like this track moves this way. That would literally be spraying it right up the back of the tank. You need way more of that pigment up the back. I'm exaggerating my upsetness with it. It's not that bad, but yes, more pigment use. Like how you've done it at the front is so beautiful. I was just like, oh, wicked! This is gonna look so sweet. Right? Oh man, really? So I was just a bit crestfallen with that because that is so beautifully done. Yes, please, more of that around here, please. That would look awesome. Also, on the bottom of the guns as well, as Matt said, the big heavy thing moving a lot through a very dry powder environment, it would definitely get there. Would even be like some chipping and weathering like on the top. You got to look at it in terms of realism. Like if it's taken damage there and there, whatever's hit it has probably then fallen like onto this large flat panel that's next to it. So there's still, and like it could have hit something and then it was scraped across the top. There would still be some damage. This wouldn't be pristine on the top sections just because that's, a bullet wouldn't come in like from the top. Or maybe could have arced over. But yeah, I just thought that the very top of the tank was too clean. I'm being hyper picky, by the way, because this is really, really nicely done weathering. You could add some more streaking, like these bullet holes at the front, which are selling fantastically well, by the way. Just a little bit like you've got some running down from like this motif here. Oh, it's come from under there, actually. Look, I can see it better on the computer. But yeah, just a little bit more of that streaking going on. Like maybe there's a little bit there. Maybe just bring that a little bit more into it. That looked cool. But like, oh, like I say, 9.3 solid for weathering on this thing. It looks gorgeous. And then, sorry, blanging on about that. Yeah, I thought the red pigment was a little bit strong. Dull it down with some browns, maybe. In some places, not everywhere, but it's just like this cakey effect, like what Matt said, you know. And on the tracks, yeah, just go back in with like a quite a dry stipply brush and just stipple some of your metal base tone in there. Knock it off the top flat areas, that sort of thing. That would be cool. Storm bolters. Every single time, mold lines. They are such a bastard, but like, oh. I know it's a pain in the ass, man, but you've got to take on these mold lines on the storm bolters. I don't know why GW like make them. There's so many pieces that they sculpt and print or mold or whatever, like with just a tube that size. But storm bolters are just two pieces, and they never join properly, man. They're such a bugger. So yeah, you can see it like on this picture. Like you've done a pretty good job on the sides, but like yeah. It's got to be fixed up. But yeah, super looking tank all in all. Really really nice, Harry. It's great. And the only other thing I thought, like for realism, which I probably should have led with, like I think Matt said it a little bit, but it's got to be like recognizable for what it is. These fantasy tanks obviously don't use like what we would recognize as a tank in terms of color. As Matt said, ours would be like grey and they'd be khaki or they'd be tan or whatever. They wouldn't have bright blue stripes painted all over them. So that's like the main thing why fantasy tanks don't have the same level as realism as like proper scale model tanks do, because they've got the iconography, they've got the color palette of tanks that we actually see in our world. So that's the only other real point, really. I think the way you've applied stuff and whether this is pretty much bang on. So yeah, great work, Harry. Really really love it, and sorry for being so picky, but that's what you get when it's this good. Please come again and bring your friends. Right, moving up to Tony. Orktoga project MMM still needs a lot of improvement. Really? I thought the NMM was pretty good, actually. A little bit of smoothness, maybe. And I think the next step up for the NMM would be interference colours for you, because it's quite smooth. The values are in the right place. You've got great contrast, edges picked out. You know, all of that stuff is great. But particularly on the silver, so this is a great example here. You could get away with a sky earth effect. So anything facing down would have like green in like the first refraction, brown in like the secondary refraction, and then in the upward facing bright metal bits we would have some blue. Not overpowering blue, just a very light desaturated pastel baby blue would be great. Really really nice. And that would make the metal sell a little bit better, because you've got this very clear, you know, ground setting that he's on, and obviously he's outdoors and well lit, so the sky would be blue pretty much. So that would make it sell a lot better. I think golds are very successful for the most part. There's a couple of areas, like you've got this gorgeous highlight here on this trim, but then this quilt effect, I think it's supposed to be gold and not yellow, I think, or maybe that's supposed to be yellow and I've just misread it. What do you think, Matt, just quickly? Is that yellow or gold, the quilt on the back?
I thought the kilt was meant to be yellow, but then
Okay.
the flakes on the side were gold.
Okay, yeah, cool. So, yeah, just this highlight. So they're a bit close. You see what I mean? Straight away, it's a little bit confusing. So, a bit more warmth into the gold, like into the shadows, would help differentiate it from the yellow. That'd be cool. Like this one here is a lot warmer. I think this is much more successful gold. Then there's all the right colors are there. It just needs like smoothing, a little bit more warmth into it, and that'll really really help. So yeah, that's it for the metals, but most of them very 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 good. I thought the skin was a triumph. Really really nice contrast in it. You've avoided the islanding. Great level of contrast to it. I just thought you could put some, you see it a lot in orcs, and it really helps a lot. It's just like regular skin tones, like pinks and reds on the joints of the beast, so like the bones of the knuckles, round the elbows, toes, knees, joints where the skin, basically, I think the rule is where the skin is thinner and the blood would show through the skin better. So like you've done it in the ears, you've done it around the nose and the lips, and that's all grand and gravy. But yeah, bring that down to the other joints of the body as well. And also it shows like a little bit of like abrasion. So he's a warrior, he's knocking, bashing, crashing, fighting. He would get wear and tear on those areas of the body. Nice textures, I thought, in general, so good work there. Like the fabric has got some great contrast in it. This scritching and scratching on this brown stuff down here, it's a little bit stark on the highest value, so I'll probably glaze this a little bit, but it's nice to see that texture there. It's really good. And then I already talked about the NMM. So the other thing was I really like the base, like this thin rim thing. I don't see that very often, and I really like that. That's cool. And you've got some great tones in there, like the browns and the greens. Really, really nice work on the base. Very interesting. So hope that helps, Tony. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Yeah, that base is awesome. Like it looks so like realistic. Like you could literally take him off it, and it could be like a scale model, like mountain or hilltop or something. Yeah, really nicely done. So I don't know. Tell us how you did that. NMM, I think, yeah, like Jim said, it's actually pretty good. Like NMM's hard. You're always improving. I think especially his like the butt end of his axe, like it has a two blade, a double headed blade on one end and a smaller one on the other. But the one that's nearest the ground looks very convincing. The way it's got kind of like the light at the top, and then it goes dark, and then it's got like the cuts that are coming out of it are like highlighted there. Like that's really good. And I think the blades of the axe head look generally. Some of them look better than others, but like you look like where the light would fall mostly. I think it looks probably better on the front view than the rear view. The rear view, the lower facing edge is too dark. It should probably be highlighted in the middle anyway. Like I know you kind of what you thought was like, oh well, if I have the highlight in the middle on the top and then it's dark on the sides, it should be reversed in the bottom. But like you're looking at like bounce light, it would still kind of hit it in the middle of the blade. And yeah, some of the other parts, like the fabrics and stuff and the hair, looks a little bit like you just kind of like washed it and said done, which is fine if like you wouldn't have spent all your time in the NMM. I think the gold, like Jim said, it looks actually quite good because it's small areas. NMM tends to be much easier in small areas and curved surfaces, like wristbands and things. They're really easy to sell in rings, whereas like plates are much harder because kind of open to interpretation how they reflect the light, and they change depending on the angle you're looking at them. Whereas a ring is because it's curved, it kind of always reflects a similar way. And I just be careful as well that like Jim said, you've got the yellow fabric and then there's the gold armor plates, but then there's also like cloth of gold rim there. So like if the fabric was like a different color, like a blue gray or something, it'd be much easier to read that. And similarly, like his underskirt thing, I like the texture that's on it, but like the strips that are going through it are like highlighted like maybe they're meant to be metal, like it's a cage thing, or like he has metal in his underskirt, but the contrast isn't quite high enough for that. So yeah, just like pick your battles. Like if you want to paint, focus on doing NMM, be like I'm going to do the axe head really good in NMM, the armor, and then the rest of it be something else. Also, Jim talked about interference color. Yeah, really good idea. I think you've done a great job considering it looks to be like black and white, but I hate using black and white for metals. Like I'll do something like use like a dark purple and green, and if you mix them together, you get gray. But it's like a chromatic gray. Or you see people do something similar like the sky earth, or if you have rust and you have then that's gonna be orange, and then you have blue, like a dark blue. When you mix them together, you get gray, and then you add like an ivory into that, and you basically just get a much more natural looking kind of metallic reflection because anything that's steel, like it's like a mirror, like a really unpolished mirror, so it's not reflecting just white light because it's not on like a catwalk or in an infinite void, the sun there. It's like in an environment where light will hit off it, and also different metals actually have their own color. Like silver is slightly different to steel, like the actual tone of it. although for practical purposes, they're basically the same. But yeah, I think it looks really good. Keep up the good work. And NMM, it's definitely going the right direction, and the work in general looks really good. So fair play. Thanks for submitting. Josh Cogswell got another big old demons pit fiend for D&D. Really cool. Gonna murder some players, I hope. Quite like the colors. I like the purple is a really nice touch because they're like the royalty of the not the abyss, the nine hells or whatever, and the gold. So like that's a really nice thing. I think the red is it's a really nice tone of red, kind of a bit glossy. So I think a lot of your nice vibrancy and highlight is coming off that, which is somewhat allowable. But I think on the wings, it's a bit glossy in the dark areas, so I'd just be careful of that. It's better to have it be glossy in areas that are exposed to light, because otherwise it looks weird. Some things, I think your coverage on your metallics doesn't look really that great. I don't know what metal paint you're using. Generally, we often recommend Vallejo metal color for that kind of thing because it's just really smooth. But the gold, like when you look at the photos, you can kind of almost see like individual like pigment particles of gold in there. You could also smooth it out with like glazes to make it like, say, you could have like some rust. Well, maybe you don't want to have rust in the blade, but you can have like some dried blood, and you get that all around the edges. And you can also use like a reddish brown wash. Often looks really good over gold as well. Anyway, just for natural shading. And yeah, similar to Angron, I think his face is kind of lost a little bit because it's the same color as his chest and everything. Like you want it to be the main point of focus. You might be like, oh well, it's all the same color. You're like, well, actually, like if you take your shirt off, your face and your chest aren't the same color. Like they're different. Like you got way more blood in your face, way closer to the surface, and it's got all different features, and the light interacts with it differently. So here he's all red, but like you can add in some more like pink or like add some like you could go flesh tone into that. You could go orange into it. You could go white, whatever you want to just bring out the face more and like bring out the details in the face so that we want to look at his face because that's the main part. Because at the moment I'm looking at his groin area where you got that really nice halo of gold and silver, which looks great, but that's not where I should be looking. Also, maybe if his horns were like a brighter color, especially if they were dark at the ends and bright in the middle, that would draw attention in. But the face just kind of looks like it could have a bit more attention to it. I like the upglow on the rock. It's a nice kind of subtle touch to it. You can kind of fade it out a little more at the edges, and maybe just add a little bit of actual color into the rock because it looks completely gray, whereas rocks are like a color that's mostly gray. So if it was like put some browns or some blues or whatever, just very faintly into it, it'll just look a bit better because when you have something that's black and dry brush gray, it looks kind of like fake because even like coal, if you look at it, actually has some sort of color to it. And especially if there's like orange light coming from beneath, like that has to go somewhere. And so yeah, having some sort of color in the rock would be a nice touch. But I think he looks great. He's got a very like menacing feel to him, and I think particularly like the way you have the silver and gold interacting with each other looks really, really good. So I hope your players are suitably impressed and terrified by him. Jim?
Yeah, standout for me was the metals. I thought they would look really good, well separated. I hadn't noticed a coverage issue actually that Matt said. I thought they looked completely fine. But what I do want to do with this, if I had this in my hand and I had 10 minutes, I would dry brush the living crap out of it. It needs these details picking out. Like you've got striations on the muscles, you've got veins, like clearly upward facing, like his, like especially this foot. I'm pointing at the screen. I'll use my mouse. Sorry. Like this section of his arm here is like upward facing, and it's the same color underneath as it is on the top. So like you've got to push the values on the top and bring this red up and bring him some life, basically, and very much so the same case for the wings. They look hyper dull. There is so much that you could do with this, and like you've painted it like clean and smooth, and there's some volumes there. Go farther, man. You can take this a lot farther. Like the level of like detail separation and like color that you've got in the metals. 10 minutes with a dry brush and two different paints. I'd go for Wild Rider red and then probably Troll Slayer orange, or like Fire Dragon Bright mixed into that red or something, just to bring some volumes. Literally 10 minutes with a decent dry brush, and boom, this thing would be popping really, really nicely. So yeah, go for it, man. Go kill it. Literally, dry brush, half hour, go do it. Just the top. Don't do everything. Just anything that's facing up, basically. Hit it with a dry brush. So yeah, but it looks cool. It looks menacing and it's clean. It's well separated. It's awesome. But yeah, just bring out those values in the skin, man, and enjoy it when you do it. It'll be fun. Dry brushing is awesome. Cheers, Josh. Okay, over to Alexis. October, have fun and thank you. Okay, really lovely. Once again, Alexis, if that chap we were talking about NMM still watching, like this is what we're talking about with like the smoothness and the color. See how there's just purple, blue, you know, there's very little actual gray in here, but it still sells beautifully as metal. So yeah, very, very strong. I like what you've done with the secondary reflections on the gold. So what I thought needed to happen was the glowing parts of this, Alexis, look quite desaturated. So I think you could boost the color value, like the eyes, the hourglass, and I think I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a glow or verdigris going on in the sickle, to be honest. I think it's a glow because it's the same sort of spirity, kind of ethereal, ghosty glow that's going on with these skulls on the flank, and obviously with the, you know, however it lost its lower half, but like this like ethereal ghosty glow, it all just looks quite desaturated. So yeah, boosting the color values there would be really, really good, I thought. Excuse me, a little bit more highlighting to this flank here, like the face of the horse and like this top section of the shoulder. I think it's called a shoulder on a horse, or this flank. It just looks like it cuts off too abruptly, like the strap that goes across it. It just is very well highlighted here and then not at all under here, and it just looks a bit too abrupt. So I think you could just bring some more of these highlight values down onto this flank and just pick up the top sections of these muscle structures that you see beneath that strap. That would be really, really helpful. It just looks like this strap cuts everything off too abruptly. So that would be cool, just to bring a little bit more light down there. You could still add plenty more interest into the lower areas without going as far as this. You know, you can take that, you know, half as far as this has gone, and I think that would make a huge difference. Again, I get that it's in shadow and you want some contrast light from this glow, but you've still got that from here. This section up, I think you need more. Like this bit here, you can leave, and that's fine. But yeah, just a little bit more love there, I think would go a long way. Gold could use a bit more mid-tone, I've got, and smoothness in the transitions. So if we be hyper picky, because we have to with you, because you're such a good painter, like this shoulder in particularly, like they're very uniformly striped. This looks like a bumblebee, frankly. Dark, light, dark, and it's very uniform, block, 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 done. Like, change the values on this. Like the upward facing section is much smoother, and you've got a much better color gamut as well. So I would lose a lot of the shadow on this side, and I'd keep the shadow with this corner, just broaden this like mid-tone out here. Same for these as well. These sections here, I think this highlight is too thin across this like gold. I think it's supposed to be gold, if not brass at the very least. I think you do need to broaden out this highlight, make the color gamut's good, the contrast is good, but just it goes from dark to like the highest highlight to the darkest shadow way too quickly. So like more mid-tone, keep that shadow there, and then come back into the mid-tone as it gets towards the edge, so you get that beautiful like double reflection, like secondary light bounce. But like the level of realism, that's a brilliant sculpt as well, I've got to say. It's a wonderful sculpt, like the detail that's in the horse's in the horse's flesh, I guess, because it wouldn't have much hair because it's clearly dead. But like lovely, and you've picked all the details out, like little wrinkles, creases, veins, you know, and the eye is absolutely stunning as well. Let's get right in. Oh, I can't get any closer. But yeah, really, really stunning work on the whole. So sorry to be picky, but I have to be to help you out. This sickle as well is like world class NMM. Beautiful. Love it. So thank you very much, Alexis. Love looking at your work. Thank you very much. Matt?
Yeah, really nice looking. I'm kind of reminded of, I think Arno Lazaro did one of these, but with like way more of that green glow from underneath. So I don't know if you were inspired by that, or if it's just kind of, that's how you would think of death. But yeah, standout parts for me are definitely the side blade and the fabric, the hood. I really love the texture and the way you've incorporated color, like cold tones into it, the whole cold ambience. And then the horse's face, where it's got those veins and it looks like it's kind of frantic and terrified. And like the fact that the horse is on in cold tones as well. Like if you just look at the horse's face, it could be like a painting. I think it's super, super great work on all three elements. The glow in the face again, like I'm just like, yeah, the glow could be more or it could be less, or maybe it's okay. Maybe it's a personal taste thing. Um, but it's not like it doesn't stand out the way we'd often expect a glow to. And the hourglass, I'm not sure it's like even really like necessary. Again, it's like, is it a light color? Is it a glow? And it's kind of fading in with the hand. So, just have a bit of a think about that. The gold for me is one of the weaker parts in places. I think Jim kind of talked about it a bit. Some places it looks really, really good, like down around the horse's neck, and it looks a bit more like brass, especially on the horse's neck. Like that kind of like if you have a brass doorknob and it's all tarnished, but the parts where it's touched are shiny. So it's not so much a reflection as there's like actual like, dirt in there. But like the horse's head, like why is it all like white on top? Like that's not how brass would look. Like it would still have a strip in the middle, and then it'd have shadow at the sides because it's reflecting stuff at the sides. And like Jim's already had gone at you about the shoulder pad thing, but like I don't think the reflection on the front face of it makes a lot of sense. The one on the top looks great, and you could kind of just have that wrap around a little bit. I'd say maybe the texture on it for you because it looks like it's got like loads of stuff embossed into it, which is also kind of annoying. So if you don't want to have to deal with that, you could also like have it like be verdigris out, so it's not like really shiny there, or it's like or it's a different material, and the gold is only on the top. And then I thought the faces that are in like the horse's rear rump or in his cloak or whatever, they don't really. It's something to do with the way you've got like the glow in them, but they're also very light. They look kind of like they kind of look like the roughs of fabric underneath. I think you could have more like of a dark line around them and then have the glow as well. But like that's a really minor, to be honest with you. Uh, so yeah, have a think about like I'd say maybe I don't know if you could find a reference image for horse armor like that, but definitely it needs to have more in the top part of the head. It can't just be like goes up to white where it's pointing upwards because it also looks like it's like peaked. So it would have like a edge highlight near the top, and the bits of the plates that are like kind of bent up at the edges, they should have a slightly different reflection pattern as well because they're like separate strip of metal. Whereas it doesn't look like you have a dark line around them, and that would make it look a lot better straight away. But yeah, love the cold tones. It's super atmospheric and moody. So good work overall. Thanks for submitting as usual, and super appropriate for Halloween, obviously. Okay, next up, Jonathan Edgar with this bust, another lady bust, also kind of Halloweeny. So nice. Using the airbrush and so the base coats. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a really interesting character. And I like the way you kind of approached it. It was looking kind of like menacing but beautiful as well, which I guess is the idea. She's like married to Hades. Colors are a nice choice. I like the flowers up near her head and the kind of creepy bone color and red that looks like is it ribs or is it armor or whatever. That's a really nice touch. Um, and the hair I think looks really good. The way you've got those kind of like ribbons, the way you've highlighted it. I'd encourage you to think about like you can use the airbrush for multiple points. Like one of the things when you're painting busts in particular is you want to like hide all your brush marks or make them look like they're meant to be there. And one of the things is like a airbrush makes a completely different mark than a paintbrush. Like it makes cones, and then like dry brushing does look thin lines. A normal brush has its own kind of paint mark. So if you kind of like alternate between those, eventually what happens is that your brain can't make any sense of it anymore. It just says, "Oh, it's all blended together." So like you can use the airbrush at the start and the end, and like alternate all your techniques between. because there's a couple of places, like say her rose she has beside her like ear. It's got a very obvious airbrushed look to it. Like you point an airbrush with red at something that is black, and that's what it looks like. Whereas if you like dry brush that and then put glazes over it, it would just hide those marks, if that makes sense. Then on the OSL, so I think that like if you just looked at the eye itself, like the eyeball, it looks really good. It's almost like a gem. But the way the light's emanating out has a problem, especially on her nose, because it looks like her nose is glowing effectively. Because there's no way if her eye was like projecting light, it's going to come out of her eye. It can't come back and hit the front of her nose unless she's like standing in front of the mirror. Um, so like the top of the nose should be under natural light or dark. Yeah, and you could have the green on the sides, just on a like literally like a rim light along there. But you would never get it on the bridge of your nose, the front bit of your nose.
Yeah, bridge.
Yeah. Because like literally like your nose creates a shadow like there's no straight line from your eye to the top of your nose. Otherwise, you'd see the top of your nose all the time. And then as well, there's a little bit of it on her like eyebrows where you've got like it's above the brow bone, which also can't happen because it's going to hit your brow bone and not be there. But that's fairly minor. And I like the way it's like transmitting through her hair. I think that looks pretty good because hair is obviously like it lets light through. So I think that's a nice touch. But I'd definitely take it off the nose, unless what you're going for is that like light is shining onto her nose and eyes. But I'm guessing because it's brightest in the eyes, I'm assuming that's the source of it. And other notes, I like the kind of desaturated look you got for everything. It's got that kind of hellish look to it. And I think like the NMM gold on like her shoulder thing looks really nice. And the overall, the piece has this like lovely kind of creepy ambience to it. And it looks really well. Jim?
Yeah, very striking. Great colors. Good application. Textures. All very nice. The hair's brilliant. Like a lot of people struggle with this like bright halo, and I think you've absolutely nailed it on the top of the head, and how that same light line is carried like across the skin of the forehead. That's really, really good. There could be some more instances of it. So the same tone, the same brightness, but just less of it, if that makes sense, in some of these other ridges of the hair. Not all of it, but just pick lines like you've done and just carry a line. It doesn't have to be as wide as this one, but it does need to be that bright, I should think. That would be really nice. The gold, I think, is a great success. I think you could just push the edge highlights and like the biggest. So up here, so again, like on the top, so the brightness of this highlight I think should be the brightest out of all of them. So at the moment, if this one and this one, which are kind of downward facing a bit, and I think those look good. I just think you need to increase the brightness of these top ones. That would be really good. Agree 110% with everything Matt said about the OSL, so I won't go over that again. I think it was like a bone that you went for in like the armor, because it looks like a kind of rib cage and like a carapace. So if it's bone you were going for, then good, very nice. You could maybe just incorporate a little bit of like desaturated green in it. That sounds a little bit of a weird thing to say, but old enough bone does have a bit of green in it, and I think that would tie in very nicely with the OSL. It's the only instance really where you'd get away with a subtle green. And it would just, I think it would just tie her face in. Obviously, hopefully you're going to knock this OSL back a bit, so there's not as much because you're going to take it all off the nose. But yeah, just bring a little bit of green into that bone. Not everywhere. I'm not saying glaze the whole thing green, just like little splotches of it. Look up like weathered bone. There's definitely green in it. So yeah, really lovely work. So thank you very much, Jonathan. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Please come again. Okay, over to Timothy with more Halloween themes. Lord of the Harvest. First time in a long time working with a lot of orange. How did it turn out? Any other general feedback? Great. Yeah, I think the orange is probably the best thing. So it's very, very bright. It's very, very saturated. However, the shadow color that you've chosen for it, I don't think works particularly well. Like this green and this purple. So if you let's just quickly do it so that let's look at a picture of a pumpkin, and you will see, hopefully I'm not completely mad, like there isn't any of that green and that purple really in it. Like that's kind of like the most extreme example, like these, but like the green is not there. So like I get that it's like a contrasting color and there's green light from the lanterns and stuff, but I just don't think you've done yourself any favors with it. Just use like a just mix like a darker, like a very dark blue into the orange and use that. That would be a much more natural shade color for it. I don't really get what's going on with the green unless it's like trying to like erupt it because it's like this ethereal light, the same what's coming out of his face. But if that's the case, it's not really selling as well. So then on to what I assume to be OSL for the rest of it. Like he's bathed in a green light, because everything is basically covered in this like softer version of the green that's in the lantern. So cool idea, just a little bit heavy-handed on the execution, I'd say. So if you were going to go for this, he's very well lit anyway, so you wouldn't get this level of green over everything. If the light's supposed to be coming from the lantern, it would just be like on things that are quite close to him. So like within this area here, like his leading arm, his leading knee, maybe a tiny bit down on the boot, maybe at a push, but everything else shouldn't really be affected by that light. It's not bright enough. So I love the brightness that's in his face. That's a very cool effect that you got going there, and it actually looks like that's coming out of him. Looks really, really good. So nice one there. Let's see what else I had. There's just a general like opportunity to push the lighting scenario here. I don't necessarily know where you are in terms of like experimenting with like lighting scenarios, but Halloween is dark. He's obviously very darkly dressed. He's not a sun lounger really. He is probably a creature of the night. So you could push the shadows a lot on this piece, an awful lot, and just make the whole lighting of it darker, and it would instantly be a lot more sort of intimidating and moody, and like the impact that you can have on the mini just by like forcing the lighting around is really 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 stark. So give that a shot at some point in your painting journey. It would be cool. Sorry, I'm just reading on my next thing. So yeah, the pumpkins have got a decent sheen on them in real life, but they don't really have it in here. So maybe just like bring in some lighter tones around like the halo of the pumpkin. Again, if I go back to this sort of area here, you see this is like sheen to it. I probably should have said this before, sorry, but like they've got a decent amount of sheen on them always. So yeah, this orange is like a little bit flat in that area where you'd expect that sheen to be. So yeah, just quick layers or a quick dry brush or something just to bring a sheen, like not on the very top of it, just come down a little way. Like if we look at this one, look, it's not right on the top, it's kind of here. That's nice little halo of highlight around it would be cool. But yeah, otherwise fun piece. So yeah, bang on theme as well with Halloween. So nice one, Timothy. Matt.
Yeah, super appropriate. I really like it the way his cape, like Jim said, I'm not sure if it's OSL or it's meant to be like the actual color of it, but his cape almost looks like it's like all these raggedy leaves and stuff. That looks really good. And I like the kind of dark ambience of his clothes. But yeah, I think you could have like I think his red shirt is a bit like loud and bright looking because again, like his clothes look like he's in the cells this kind of dark mood. If you think of like Freddy Krueger wears a red and green jumper, but like it's not that color of red. It's very dingy and brown looking. And yeah, that might just kind of help sell the kind of like nighttime idea, which will help with your glowing effects. Get the idea that kind of just unnatural light around him, whereas the shirt looks kind of like it's under like normal daylight. And yeah, I really like the way you've got some color in like all the jeans and everything. That it's not just like a flat like gray highlight, and with the weapon as well. It looks like you had a little bit of trouble maybe with like coverage on your pumpkins. Looks like maybe you were going like orange over black, and you end up with this kind of like on a chalky finish. But it's just hard to get it. You have to put on lots of layers. I'd probably like base coat it so sort of red brown, and then work up from there. And again, if you want to sell the idea that it's nighttime, only a small amount of the pumpkin's actually going to get up to that really bright orange color. Most of it's going to be like a darkened down, like more of a brown orange color, if that makes sense. Um, and then the last thing was, I think in his face, I like the way you got like that kind of creepy green glow coming out of him. I think you could put in a wash to darken like the edges, because just to kind of separate like the actual outside of the pumpkin from the green glow inside. Does that make sense? If it was like darker around the sides, that would sell the idea that it's like it's dark and it's glowing from inside, and there's like a shadow in between the light that's coming from inside and the light that is like incident on it from the outside. But yeah, really cool, really interesting model. Thanks for submitting, especially for Halloween. Next up, we've got this Cleopatra bust by Daniel Liu. Really, really stunning looking work. Really challenging piece with it being like full half female bust. Got NMM on it. Got really strong motivated lighting. Got other lighting coming from the other side. Loads of exposed skin. Got sheer clothing. It's like a laundry list of like advanced painting techniques, and it looks really, really good. So we're going to be we're going to be pretty picky about things because it's painted to a super high standard. But you said you wanted to see, what could be improved on it. I really like the colors. I really like the way you've got this kind of like warm and cool look, and I think it's really good. I think the shadow side, I really like the way it looks. Like I think it's a very convincing like it's like nighttime looking. It's got everything's got that blue sheen to it, and you've got the highlights just like it kind of goes very stark around all the curves of the flesh, and it looks really convincing and really nice. Um, and yeah, I think the sheer effect looks very good, and like I like the way you've got like micro like stippling and stuff in the texture of the bodice and that kind of thing. And I think probably for me actually the best bit of the piece overall at the moment is the cat headdress thing. Just because it looks kind of like the most complete. Like if you just look at it on its own, it's like a microcosm of the piece where it's got that warm and cold contrast to it, and it looks super good. NMM. If we look really close at some other places, it'll kind of like they look good individually, but then they look because there's like the way they interact with the surrounding areas. You've got this kind of islanding effect. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So her necklace, the gold necklace, I don't think it's the way it's highlighted makes it look like the light is coming and hitting her from the front here, whereas everything else says it's coming from the side. So it should be more like edge highlights on the gold because the light is coming from the side, if that makes sense. It's not far off, but I think that would make a big difference. And as well, it's strange how like her like tendon in her neck is lit, but like her jawbone isn't. Like I understand why you do that. You're like trying to get cheekbone to look really bright, but you have to come back up to some kind of mid-tone around here to show that like why would your chin be lit and not here? Like it's got to go somewhere not as bright as the top of the cheekbone, but you've got to have something along here because otherwise, when you just look at it in isolation, you're like, why? It starts to look like it's just a different color rather than it being an effect of the light. Also, I like the way you've got that like Rembrandt look. It's really strong, and the way with the eye makeup and everything. But in certain angles, when you look at it, like so the way her right eyebrow is lit, so you've got like it's like dark light and then dark and then light again, but it makes it look like there's a big like crease, like a dent in her face here, which there isn't. Like your brow bone is all like one piece. So I don't think that shadow should go quite that dark, like just above the top of her nose. I think you should have like the light carry on a bit further and then go to shadow and then pick out the other eye. Because you got to think about it as well, like the Rembrandt lighting. The reason why you have this island of light here, which is actually what I have right now, is because the shadow from your nose is touching the shadow from your face, but like there isn't a shadow, like one of your eyebrows doesn't stick out further enough to cast the shadow before the other one. So it's only the curvature of the head that's going to do that. And then as well, some of the places around the body, I think I really like the way you've done like the highlights up in the nose and the chin and stuff, and it's got that kind of specular texture to it. but some of the shadows, like around chest area and things, it like there's a very distinct dark line, and I think you could just like stipple and fade that out a little bit, because like obviously like your skin has like very fine texture to it everywhere. So if you look really closely, like even in like an occlusion shadow, like in your like crook of your elbow or whatever, it's going to be a slightly rough line. You don't have like a sudden dark line, and in some places it looks kind of like, you know, when you have those like sci-fi figures of ladies who are made of chrome and they have like really sharp, like almost like they have the NM look, but like parts of like the breasts and her chest area, it's like got shadows here where I don't think they would be because it's not like a reflective surface. Um, and you got to consider that like okay, you've got two planes touching each other, but there's skin over them, so like you won't have like such a dark line because it's not like she's got like a recess going into her, and that would create that deep of a shadow uh, in the front of her torso. But yeah, like it's super good work. Like the amount of other stuff I haven't mentioned, like the way the jade looks in the ear and everything, it's really high end. So hope it didn't come out too critical there. But I think like you're a very good painter, obviously. So I was trying to give you as much food for thought as possible. Jim?
Very comprehensive review, I must say. Um, Brilliant advice. I haven't got anything else to add, really. It's gorgeous. Like, the metals are an absolute triumph. Like, the smoothness, the reflections, you know, primary, secondary scratches, like the way that you've done the shadow line between the two light sources in the cat's head, and especially like down the bridge of the nose. This is absolutely stellar. Like, this is the one thing like we most get when you get two different light sources, like having this area of shadow between. You clearly understand the assignments. You've absolutely nailed it, even down to like having this area here, like really harshly shadowed from where the light's bright, and then just a softer one from the cooler side. Wonderful work. All the jade bits look really, really good, really smooth. I'd maybe just push the highlights a little bit on this side because they don't look that different. If you look at this earring, it doesn't look that different from this earring. So I just make the greens on this side of her a bit brighter. Excuse me. But yeah, in general, like as Matt said, like this dark side just looks absolutely wonderful. Where is it? There it is. I'm zoomed in too far. Like that's really, really convincing moonlight. So a couple of blends that I spotted that you said this isn't quite finished. So I'm sure you were going to sort this out anyway. So this cheekbone blend, I'd smooth that. This highlight here, which I think is the one that Matt was mentioning, I would smooth that one. Moving around like this side of her seems much more like finished, if you like. Let's go around. So on this side of the headdress, so this section is quite rough compared to the rest of it. So I'm sure, as I said, I'm sure you were going to smooth that out anyway, but just in case, you know, I'll point these out. Because I'm assuming this is going to end up in a competition somewhere. It should. And this neck area also smoothness here, smoothness on this part of the body, and as Matt said as well, like this shadow's just a touch too stark, a bit too crisp, this one. So just a little bit of softening around here because yeah, it has got that kind of like android, like metal, like cyberpunk armor kind of feel to it. So yeah, just softening that out a little bit. Wonderful work on the sheer. Oh, just beautiful. And like the eye of Ra, like the freehand Ra on the left eye as well. That looks awesome as well. So great job there. Really, really nice. I've got no other criticisms really. Just stunning work. Keep it up. Post it where we're going to see it when it's finished, man, because this is absolutely beautiful. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you so much. Okay, moving up to Mikhail Zidu, who was days late, but we are late as well, so we forgive and we forget. This current project, The Burr Queen, want to know general opinion, try to play with OSL and focus the light. This is really strong as well. Lovely contrast, great colours, striking, beautiful sculpt as well, and you've rendered it really, really nicely. So I love, again, we're quite lucky here, aren't we? Having two bits to finish on that have this like dual light source. So like this strong yellowy green tinge that's coming up and affecting the wings, and then like the bounce light from the plants coming up underneath, dark shadow in between them. Beautiful. Very, very nice. I would say though, with the OSL, a couple of things. So smoothing out the blend would be lovely jubbly. You can clearly do it because look at these like Goldie blends. They're absolutely buttery and smooth. So I just tidy up these transitions a little bit. This one isn't quite so bad because it's a thinner one, but again, just a little bit of glazing there just to soften those two would be cool. And it ends rather abruptly here as well, just in the middle of the back. So that was a bit of a trigger for me. So that needs to be softened out. Maybe use the like color that you've got here. Just lose this bit if it's not too much of a pain, and have it fade out on this section. That would be cool. And also this secondary light underneath does seem very bright, considering like the brightness of what's underneath it. So a couple of ways you can get around that. I think what you should do is brighten up the petals, because I think they're a bit dull anyway. I get that they're beneath it, and probably not that bright, but still they look like they could have a bit more detail in them. The blue petals and these like Cape daisies, they look a lot better than these, I don't know what to call them, I'm not much of a botanist, but these red ones down here, they could do with more saturation and more highlight to them. Obviously, as they get closer to the her, they can go darker. That's absolutely fine. But like the brightness of this glow is higher. Like the glow effect is brighter than where it's apparently coming from, if that makes sense. So either you got to tone this down or you got to punch these way up. But I think you're capable of doing either because it's really, really beautifully done. I love the smooth transition in the wings. You could maybe come in with a very extreme highlight color like ice yellow or dawn yellow or something like that. Even like a very like a pale flesh or something, just to pick out some of the top edges. Not all of it because it will look like you've freehanded it on, but just pick out some sections of the veins like in the wing structure. That would be really cool. And then the final thing was oh, sorry, I've forgotten what it was. Yeah, so it's a tricky one. Kind of the tone of the wings, the tone of the body, the tone of the horns, the tone of the hands, and the staff is all very much the same. And I think if I was going to change one, to break it up a bit, it would be the wings, because she hasn't got any of the color really that's on the base, and I think it would be super nice. What's the word? Like in terms of color theory and like binding them together, bring some of the blue, I think, up into the wings. It doesn't have to be like as bold and as striking as this, but just to break it up, I'd sort of from this section here to about there, I would start bringing some of that like lavender kind of hue into it. I think that would be a really, really nice way to add a bit more color under here. And because of the way that you've sort of blended this out, it would also create like a little circle of color right around her head and torso, like that, if you see what I mean. So the blue wouldn't come all the way to the end. It'd just be like a section glazed in around here, and it'd bring like this blue like circle, like this is where you should be looking, right here. So yeah, I hope that helps, Michael. But it's beautiful work. It's very, very smooth, great contrast, and yeah, lovely, lovely work. So thank you again, Michael. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. I get warm feelings looking at it. The like gold NMM, like it sells so convincingly. Like you have to look so hard to be like, oh, it's just different colors, not be like, yeah, it's a real bee lady. She's made of liquid gold. I like, and the way that the staff managed to look different than the body of her, even though it's kind of all the same thing. I think it's super, super nice. And then that rim light of yellow on the side looks super good. Like Jim said, main areas for like further stuff to do are in that red upglow and in the wings. I personally, I'd probably go for like I think the way the red is kind of lighting the underneath of her abdomen, it's bright, but it's also very like stark, like it doesn't fade out at all. So I'd like reduce that area a little bit and with a dark red. and similarly on the knees, like it looks really good in the front view when it's like a rim light, but then when you look at the actual front of the knees, it's weird how they're like there's a strip of light which doesn't make sense, like on that knee, because it's like why would there be literally like light in that shape shining? So I'd make that broaden that out towards the shadow side with like a darker red, just so it looks like it's it's shining on the knee and it's fading out then. And then on the wings, yeah, I don't know exactly what color you want to use. I was kind of thinking blue as well, like just a very dark blue, because I think what the wings could really do with is that vein structure, because it goes like light to dark, but I think you could call out that vein structure that's in the wings at the end, because you think like, it's translucent, but also it's like going to refract light like a bee's wings does. So all the little veins will have highlights on them, even if there's like the light is passing through the flat panels. So like if you had them brought out in a bright color, you could then have a dark color behind it to show the kind of transparency of the panels, and then you'd have your second or third halo of lights around the figure, really just kicking this whole thing off. I like the base. I like that it is darker and it's not drawing too much attention and that kind of thing. But the fact that like the flowers are there, they're still kind of bright and enjoyable when it sells the whole like I'm the bee queen kind of thing. Super super nice work, Michael. Yeah, great. Like it's a lovely sculpt, and you've done a really really good job on painting it up. So thanks a million. Hopefully that's helpful to you. Thank you to everyone else who submitted for putting your figures out there for us to review. Hopefully we've said something that was helpful to you. And hopefully you've enjoyed the video. We'll see you again next month.